When did your stepfather erase every trace of your father? 3 years after my dad died, my mom married a man who made it his mission to delete my father from existence. Gary moved into our house like he'd always owned it. First week, all of Dad's photos disappeared from the living room. Mom said Gary thought they were depressing. Next, Dad's tools vanished from the garage, then his books, his coffee mug, even the wooden sign he'd carved for our front door. By month 2, you couldn't tell my dad had ever lived there. I was 15, still grieving, still wearing Dad's old Marines jacket to school every day. Gary hated that jacket, called it ratty, said I looked homeless, told Mom I was stuck in the past and needed to move forward. One morning, the jacket was gone. Gary said he donated it to veterans in need. I found it in the trash, covered in coffee grounds. Dad's workshop was next. He'd built it himself, spent every weekend there teaching me woodworking. Gary turned it into his man cave the day I left for a school trip, painted over Dad's pencil marks on the walls, threw out the half-finished birdhouse we'd been building together. When I hung Dad's picture in my room, Gary took it down, said keeping dead people's photos around was unhealthy. I woke up to find it in pieces in our garbage can. The growth chart got me. Dad had marked my height on my bedroom doorframe every birthday since I could walk. Little dates and doodles next to each line. Gary painted over it while I was at school, just painted right over years of memories like they were nothing. I begged Mom to stop him. She'd just stare at the floor and whisper that Gary was helping us heal. He had her convinced that keeping Dad's memory alive was toxic, that real love meant forgetting the past. When I turned 18, I found Dad's military footlocker in the attic. His uniforms, medals, the flag from his funeral. I spent hours up there just holding his things. Gary found me and lost it. Said I was being dramatic and disrespectful to him as the man of the house. The next day, it was all gone. Gary said he donated everything to a military museum. I called every museum in the state. None had heard of him. The breaking point came on what would have been Dad's 50th birthday. I'd hidden one thing from Gary, Dad's toolbox. Rustic green metal with his initials carved in the handle. He'd carried it doing construction to pay for college. It was all I had left. I came home from school to find Gary in the driveway, tossing it in the garbage truck. I screamed at him to stop, ran after the truck as it drove away. Gary just stood there, hands on his hips, watching me chase my dead father's last possession down the street. When I confronted him, he actually smiled. Your mother needs to move on, he said. And so do you. I'm your father now. Mom stood in the doorway, said nothing, did nothing, just watched her son break down in the driveway. That night I started digging. Turns out Gary had done this before. Found his ex-wife Linda on Facebook. She told me everything. Gary had married her 2 years after her first husband died in Afghanistan. Systematically erased every trace of him. Threw out his things. Painted over murals he'd made for their daughter. Convinced Linda it was healthy. Their daughter Emma hadn't spoken to either of them in 5 years. I reached out to Emma. She was 23 now, living 2 states away. She sent me photos, her dad's stuff in garbage bags, Gary painting over her height chart, screenshots of Gary calling her dad a dead loser online. We made a plan. Gary's company picnic was his big show every year. He'd parade Mom around, play perfect husband, brag about his ready-made family. All his co-workers thought he was this amazing stepdad who'd saved a widow and her troubled son. Emma showed up at the picnic with a box. Inside were printed screenshots. Gary trashing her dead father online. Photos of him throwing away military uniforms. Text messages where he bragged about fixing broken families by erasing the dead husbands. But the real shock was Emma herself. She looked at Gary and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "You erased my father. You erased him from our house. And when I wouldn't call you dad, you erased me too." Mom saw everything. The pattern. How he'd done this to another widow, another dead soldier, another grieving child. How he'd probably keep doing it. She filed for divorce that week. Gary fought for the house, saying he'd invested so much in improving it. The judge saw right through him when Mom's lawyer presented the evidence of systematic emotional abuse. He lost everything. Mom and I spent last weekend rebuilding Dad's workshop from memory. Found some of his old tools at a garage sale. Hung his picture back in the living room. Gary lives in a studio apartment now. Still posts about being a victim of ungrateful stepchildren on Facebook. Emma comments the truth on every post. Turns out you can't erase someone who lives in people's hearts, but you can definitely erase yourself from them.